I'm going to let him go ahead and start first. And Dan, I'll stop sharing and you can share your screen.
Awesome.
Hopefully.
Thank you, Katie. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
So I've got a handful of updates, and I'm trying to, let's just share the screen once first. So I'm going to reference a couple forms. I want to pull up EdPlan so you can kind of see where those forms live before I dive into the other updates. So this is just my training site. And if you go down to the bottom, Katie was kind enough to now include an assessments tab. So right here, you'll see all the forms that I'm going to reference today live right here. So you can click them, download them, and work with them. So with that, let me pull up our other updates. First one being an EdPlan update for gifted and talented assessment, something that we noticed that we needed to adjust based on, hold on one second, based on the performance task assessment. I also can't totally see the cameras in the side, so if you do have a question, feel free to interrupt me and jump in just because I'm kind of just looking at my slides. So for this, our gifted and talented accommodations for performance task first. So the Cog Iowa assessments have their own set of accommodations, and then the performance task assessment has a different set of accommodations that go along with it, and there's not total overlap. It's also unique in the sense that not all students that take Cog Iowa will take the performance task because they have to qualify for Dimension A and Dimension B leading into Dimension C. So you'll see there's an update here in your available accommodations. These ones down here at the bottom that are unchecked, and this is just to show you guys what the additions are, that's why they're unchecked, are just eligible for the performance task. Therefore, we put that extra note at the end of the accommodation, only available for performance task assessment if eligible. So you can select these accommodations prior to the student taking any of the GT assessment. However, they would only be applicable if they were to qualify for the performance task. Reason being is we don't know until they get the result back if they're going to be taking that. So we wanted there to just be a kind of a safety in place in the event that they are going to take the PTA, that they are able to get those accommodations and it be reflected within their IEP. All right, now for my forms that I am remarkably excited for. So these forms are not new. Everyone should recognize these two. This is Appendix A and Appendix B, which are used for eligibility for our South Carolina alternate assessments. The update is that I made these forms fillable, so you can download them directly from EdPlan and update the student's information rather than having to handwrite that information in there. It's just a PDF form that you can type all the stuff in, and here's just a picture example of what it looks like. If you come across any snags or any things that are out of place or the font is wrong, please let me know, and I'm
Hey.
more than happy. Hey.
I was calling you. Why was I calling you?
Oh, hold on. I need to mute somebody. If everyone can mute themselves, I don't think they're talking to you, Dan.
Oh man, I was excited for a question.
I know. I was like, oh, somebody has a question.
All
right, I think we got them.
Okay. All right. So for these forms, like I said, we should be familiar with them. They're now just fillable and available on EdPlan for you guys to download and work with. So the next form I'm going to show, there are two forms. I'm going to kind of dive into one of them. This is a resource. I want to just keep saying that this is a resource. This is a resource. If you were at our offices, Office of Assessment and Standards office hours, then you may have seen me show a little bit about this. This form is now live. You can use this with your districts. You can use this with a specific school or a specific teacher, whatever you see the need for. But I'm really excited about this form. And if you have any experience working with students in North Carolina, then this form might look familiar. So this is our South Carolina Review of Accommodations form. The intent of this form is a layer of test security as well as future planning for IEP meetings. So the number one test security violation is not providing accommodations on test day. This form is aimed to combat that. And I'm going to break down how it's presented or how it's prepared. But there is one form per student per test. It is prepared by your case manager or school testing coordinator or SPED director or whomever within the school building prior to test day. And then the second portion of it is completed by the test administrator on test day, maybe during the test or right thereafter, to show its effectiveness. So this form, we're going to break it into 4 parts. This top section would be all of the student information, their name, student ID number, where this plan is coming from, is the plan up to date, what test does this reflect in which subject or subtest. That's very important, as we know that students might not get the same accommodations for their ELA, SC Ready, as they would for science. This second portion, which was in the top right corner, has some information that can be completed prior to test day, and then other portions of it would have to be handwritten in. So you can note if it's regular administration or if it's a makeup day, so the dates make sense. You can list the school and the grade. However, the test date and test administrator are not fillable, as that's information you would need to complete day of testing to make sure that it's accurate. So you'll see that some portions of this are not fillable, and that was intentional. So column A, this is where prior to test day, an individual would complete with all of the students active accommodations that are featured in their IEP 504 or ILAP. And ILAP is in there, so you'll see there's a couple extra accommodations that we don't offer within Ed Plan. However, that's reflective of the ILAP. So you would check these boxes to say, this is exactly what accommodations they should be getting on test day. In the bottom portion of the column, you can record your printed name, but this signature part obviously is not fillable. That would have to be handwritten on there to show that, yes, I approve everything on here is correct. I am holding myself accountable that this is prepared, and these are all the accommodations that the student needs. So this is good prep to hand to your school testing coordinator when they're making groups that, hey, I have this form. I know exactly what group they need to be in and what accommodations I should be providing on test day.
And Dan, we have a quick question.
Sure.
Wendy asked, is the information going to be directly shared with district DTCs?
Yes, so I presented this last week with DTCs that were on our office hours, and then it will also be sent out in the future by Susan, who's my team lead. She's over test administration.
And also, Wendy, we will be sharing this information again during the LEA call on Tuesday. So I've been trying to be very diligent in making sure that all the parties are getting the right information and kind of in a flow that works. So I know some of the people that are on this call are on Tuesday's call, but some of them aren't. And so just making sure that everyone hears this and knows about these resources and what we're doing. The other thing I wanted to add quickly is for the Appendix A and B. Right now they're in the resources tab, but our long-term goal is to have those as forms in Ed Plan with development. So just adding that piece. Thank you, Dan.
Absolutely. So this column B would be completed on test day. This is the test administrator is saying, yes, the accommodation was offered, as it always should be. And then a brief description of how the accommodation was provided. Some of these things will be very obvious statements. However, some will have more detailed information. If the student rejects an accommodation, this would be where that is noted. And that's why it would be important for future planning. When you come to that IEP meeting and the parent is so determined that my student is getting, I don't know, multiple testing sessions, and you say, well, we have these documents that for the last however many years they haven't been using it. That's why it's not an appropriate accommodation. This is just extra data supported there. So to give an example of, and I apologize, I had to handwrite this myself, as you can tell by my handwriting. So this is an example of a completed form. The student information I was able to type in, and then you see some of my handwriting there. The check marks would be the accommodations. Everything was offered, and then a brief description of what that looks like. And I'll be able to zoom in a little bit more to show you. So for these first 2 accommodations, student use oral admin through TTS on computer. Very quick, very easy. Yes, this was offered, and this is what it looked like. However, if you look down at the bottom, this was for multiple testing sessions within 1 day. Yes, it was offered. However, the student completed the test in 35 minutes and did not use this accommodation. This would be where you're showing that the accommodation was not used and would be used for future planning. However, the test administrator is still able to sign and say, yes, I provided this accommodation. It's there. I can assure that there is no testing violation, that it's all up to date. So this is just a resource. I cannot reiterate that enough. However, because it is such a huge testing security violation and we're seeing it so common, this is a great procedure to put in place, whether it be district-wide, whether it be with a specific set of schools that maybe have had these violations in the past, or a specific teacher that has a hard time keeping these things in order, however you would want to use this form. It will be up in EdPlan, which allows you, after these forms are completed, to upload them directly back. You can scan them back in and put them into EdPlan, whatever works for you. If you are going to use it, I would love to get your feedback. I'd love to give more explanation on how to use this form. However, I can be an asset and help you guys out in using it, because it's something I'm very excited about, and I think it's something that has a lot of value. So thank you. I appreciate you guys letting me present. Does anyone have any questions or anything immediate about it?
There was some questions.
Oh, great.
Just about this, and so just to follow up, because it was in the chat, I'll send it out via email after our call in case there's any other information that I need to share after the meeting. I'll go ahead and wait and send one big email. And then right now it is in the resource information widget under the new and shiny assessment tab, and it's working its way over to the production site as well. Any other questions for Dan? All right, we appreciate your time.
Yeah,
Thank you, Dan,
so
for
much, Katie.
helping
I
us
appreciate
with,
it.
you know, and you know, I go to Dan now for all things assessment. We're really trying to I don't know, make things easier. Don't want to, you know, work smarter. But so as you have suggestions, send them over to us, and then we can make sure that we're addressing that information at a plan and making sure everything's accurate. All right, moving on to our next piece, our next item on the agenda is we're having this conversation about reactivating inactive students. So we've had a lot of requests, feedback that, you know, power users are the only ones that can reactivate the student once they leave the district or they've been withdrawn. And so sometimes there's things that need to be done maybe by the school psychologist or the speech, you know, pathologist. And so we're trying to look at that piece. We've looked at pros and cons of both sides of this. And I think, Nick, are you on, or Anne?
Yes.
To add to that?
Yeah, definitely. I can speak to this part, and then Anne, if you have anything to add. We know right now that level 3 users do not have access to the inactive students menu. And a lot of level 3 users would like access, a lot of speech language pathologists or school psychologists. But then another group of users in that group is the team lead case manager, which is a very, very common user type. So they're kind of the 3 that were under consideration. And I think school psych and SLP are the 2 under close consideration. Is that right, Katie?
Yep. So right now, without hearing any like real big concerns from this group, our thought is to move forward with changing the user type to add this permission of being able to reactivate students for school psychologists and speech language pathologist. And then that would allow them to finish like an eval that what they were working on, instead of having to call a power user every morning to say, can you reactivate them for me? We are not at this time looking at extending that to teachers. We thought that might be a little bit too much. So we're going to test the waters and see how this works with that. You know, because if you're trying to run data and you don't want all those inactive students in there. And so this is what we're looking at. And so if you have any thoughts on that, you can drop them in the chat. You can email me. But we are looking at making this change, I believe, Friday. So it'll take place over the weekend. Is that correct, Nick?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Once we had this meeting, we just wanted to make sure, you know, we wanted to make everyone aware. And it doesn't mean that you like, you know, just because we're saying that they can, your district can say to them, no, you cannot. Like, we don't want you reactivating them. So, you know, maybe I'm, you know, a smaller district and I'm like, no, I really don't want them to reactivate. I want to know I can do it. That's fine. You'll have that conversation with them. But I really think it'll help with the power users, you know, spending an hour of their morning reactivating students for people. So we're going to see how this goes. But any feedback on that would be great, you know, or concerns. All right, and so we're gonna move on to the next one. And Nick, I believe this is you, what to do in the case of an amendment where nothing is changed in the IEP.
Yeah, I can chat through this one. And do
Nick,
you
Nick, I
have?
have it set up. I can go if you want me
Oh,
to.
Perfect. Right on.
And-
Go for it.
All
Ann.
right, next time I need to put a little thing as to who's saying what, like whose item
No, you're
is
good.
that?
Well, I'm happy
Thanks,
for
Ann.
Nick to take over everything, but this particular case. Okay, so we have the for amendments. The plan is that in the IEP process, we chose amendment with a meeting. And what's going to happen is you will have the choice, and Nick, you could probably say when this is supposed to roll out, but there'll be a choice here now of other and that other box for the amend with the meeting in the IEP process.
And Ann, can you show the without so people can see the
Mhm.
comparison?
I can.
Thank you. There you go. Yeah.
So Nick, do we know when this change is gonna roll out?
I believe this is a component of April release, so we should see this near the end of next month, the beginning of May.
Okay, we have a question. I've had many ask about bringing back the amendment cover page. Any chance of having something similar added to documents?
We haven't talked about like a full cover page, as you know, with the amendments, it just kind of updates that front page. It adds more information about when the amendment was done or when it'll take place. But I think we do have that on like a district request that we review when we are looking at what changes to make. So not saying no, but I know that it's not anything that's coming out like towards the beginning of the school year. So we've already got kind of mapped out, April releases are done. Those will be rolling out at the end of April. And then we have August releases, and August releases are heavily involved with the eval process. And then right now we are working on finalizing the December changes. So I know this won't happen until at least 2026 if it happens, but it is on our list. All right, any more questions about that part? All right, so we're going to move on to reevaluation consent. And in February, update the fields were added to make consent form also serve as a PWN. So we just wanted to remind you all of that. I've gotten a couple questions about it. And so before there was like some of the necessary questions were there, but not all of them. And so now that's been changed. And I think Ann's showing that. So we can see that. As now it will serve as the PWN. And I think the header was changed to say consent to reevaluate a prior written notice. So that will serve as that prior written notice.
And in the workspace, it's just like the initial placement one was. You just have your actions proposed and accepted and any other factors.
Yeah, the feedback I think that we got was everyone liked the initial, why couldn't the reeval be that way? And so we did that. Okay, all right. And then our next piece that's on our agenda for today is the MDR. And so in Enrich, you documented if it was that a proposed removal for is for more than 10 consecutive days, or if the reason you were holding this was because the student has been subjected to a series of removals. And so there was not a place that we had that indicated in Ed Plan. And so looking at that, we are adding this into the notification of meeting. So Ann's going to walk us through that. And it's
So
going to
right-
be, oh, yep, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say it's going to be right under the purpose of the meeting.
Yes, it's gonna be added right here under purpose of meeting to conduct a manifestation. And these two choices will be there. But for right now, just remember to include them until that's added. They will be added to this notification of meeting here.
And I think that's Monday, right? That'll be there Monday, well, Saturday, if you're working on.
I think that's the
Saturday.
aim.
Yeah.
The two choices being added, I'm sorry, that is very small, you can't read it. The choices being added are the proposed removal is for more than 10 consecutive school days. And the student has been subjected to a series of removals that constitute a pattern.
And so what we'll be doing is, from now, yeah, the aim is that it will appear starting, you know, they make the change on Friday and then it populates like Saturday morning. So it will be there. That is the aim right now. And then, once we do more development, we're looking at December's development timeframe, where we're actually going to include that information in the MDR, and then it would make it reportable. So it would be a reportable field. Wendy, it's straight from the reg. It's one of the things that in regulation, we reviewed it with Peter. You need to indicate one of those two reasons that you're meeting for that MDR. And Wendy said, will you be able to check both choices? As of right now, yeah, you can, because you can check more than on that purpose of meeting. You can check all of them, I think. I mean, you shouldn't, but I think you can. So yeah, you'll be able to check that. And then you also still have that other if you needed to add, you know, more information to that, or you're meeting for more reasons. Yes. I have them somewhere from like our feed, like our talk, so I can drop that in. I just have to find it.
And I believe that you did also want to mention in the notes, don't forget to complete your PWN after you have your manifestation meeting. You would get that PWN in documents. Sorry, general, right here, the prior written notice. After you're finished with that meeting, that was in my notes.
All right, and so if you're following along with our agenda, I'm gonna show that back up. We are moving on to ESY and future dated IEPs. And Anne, are you gonna do that, or is Nick got that?
No, that's not. I think that was just a discussion of how to do that. I think we don't have anything to show. I think that you were going to talk about it.
Okay, we're gonna talk through it. So just,
Yeah.
and I think we've talked about this before. So right now, if you are doing future dated IEP, so you're writing your IEP, you know, next month for next school year, if there's that workspace, once you start changing that workspace for next school year's IEP or the next IEP, the next annual, that workspace, if you go back in to try to do an amendment, it's going to be what you've just done. So you're not going to be able to amend if you've already started that IEP with the old information on it. And so that question has been brought up. We're looking at different different ways that can be done through development. But that is something that I don't know if you guys were aware of that or how you're looking at that. But when you're looking at updating the IEP, like if you needed to do amendment in the month of May, so you wrote your IEP for next year and you've done your annual, that workspace is now for that annual IEP and not the previous IEP. And so you wouldn't be able to amend that. And so we've talked a little bit about that the need for that. I think that, you know, EdPlan is really of a system like when you're doing not so much for future dated IEPs. And so we'll have more conversation as we go through that, but that is just something that recently came up with questions about, you know, going back and addressing ESY on this year's IEP, but I've already written next year's IEP and the problems that that's causing. And so how are you going to do that if you're looking at future dated IEPs and then looking at, is there another way that we can address ESY so that that doesn't happen for districts that write future dated IEPs and that doesn't become so cumbersome. So the next topic for discussion is the exit reasons. And so looking at those, Anne.
Yeah, I think that Nick, you said that you had some information to share about the exit reasons.
Yes, this one's in my world. I'm gonna
Okay.
grab the screen share here.
Yep.
So we communicated with a number of folks when we were discussing indicator 14, is how some of this started to emerge in Zendesk tickets. So if we conversed on that, you probably know what I'm talking about. And if not, this is a reminder of the way students were exited during the system transition period last year. So what I have up is just a single student on the training site. But the important part is the date exited of June 30th, 2024, and the exit reason of unknown. Right now on the training site, there's one student that has these conditions, but if you searched in your site for how many students you had exited June 30th, 2024 with a reason of unknown, it would be very many. It's because last year during the system transition, EdPlan SC was not receiving exit information from your district data warehouse during the time where data was transferring from Enrich. So what happened in September, it was one of the things we talked about on some of the really early office hours. We did the mass student inactivation. So that looked at your system on September 7th was the day, and it determined if the students in the students file were still in your system. If they were, those students remained active. But if there was a student who was in your system, but not in the file on September 7th, 2024, they were exited with a generic date of June 30th, 2024, the last day of last year's reporting period, and a generic reason of unknown. Many of these students will be graduates because they graduated right in June or end of May as the system transition was occurring. So they were in the system prior to launch, but in September of this year, they were not and were exited with the date of June 30th, 2024 and a reason of unknown. I'm going to pause there and see if we have any questions in the chat. There's no action needed to be taken on these students, but we found this coming up quite often in Zendesk tickets. Why are there these unknown students on June 30th, 2024? That is because of the first year system transition. All right, I'm going to drop my screen share. Katie or Ann, do we have any questions coming on that in the chat? Okay. Don't see anything coming in.
I'm muted. Melissa was asking nothing about exit. Melissa was asking about the yes, why decisions deferred. So until May, are you saying, sorry, I'm in the middle of answering the question. Now it's not. Are you saying this annual IEP can't be amended? And so what we're saying is if like you wrote an IEP for this student, let's just say that was going to go from this year. You wrote this IEP in August to go from August until the end of this school year. And then you started writing next school year's in April. And in May, yes, like you were deferred to ESY. The workspace would be for that IEP that you're writing for next school year, not for the current one. So that's where that would be. You wouldn't be able to amend in the system through that process because that workspace would be old. Or I'm sorry, that workspace would be for next school year. It wouldn't be the one for last school year. And then for storage, Wendy, email me. I will take care of, I will discuss storage with you. And then Nikki asked, is there a report we can run for exit reasons? Oh, she said, never mind, I found it. But maybe we want to share that with everyone, that a report that they can run for exit reasons.
Yeah, I'll type that in the chat. There's a report in AR that when you open it, it will ask you for a begin date and an end date. and it'll return to you all students who exited during, thank you, Ann. Yeah, right there. So Ann, can you click on that? It won't open.
I'm in the
any-
training site, so it's not gonna pull anything.
Okay, cool. So what Ann is showing is one of those 4 reports that is publicly hosted. So if you go to your folder in AR from the state, this report exists. And you enter dates like Ann is showing. I think you got to click that plus, Ann, before you navigate away or it won't save.
Oh,
So you gotta, yeah.
well, that's not even a date.
And then Nikki, as Ann's doing that, seeing what you're saying, that's correct. You can do this in the interface by going to inactive students, and there you can choose a reason. You can set a range of dates, and you can access students from that page. If you're looking for just like a Excel sheet or just raw data about those students, what Ann is showing you with the AR report would be the way to go. So as Ann said, you won't see any data returned here, but you would get the date the student exited, your LEA name, the student's ID, their exit reason. And again, you'll see a lot of unknowns when you run this. If you set it to contain last year because of the system transition, it's just a first year condition. And then if you made that modified exit reason, it would pull in this report too.
So anything that are any modified exit reasons that are blank are students that you will need to add a modified exit reason for. Am I saying that correctly?
I think not in all cases. And I think this is something we're planning to cover at the April office hour in
Okay.
terms of the exit table. But some exit reasons come from PowerSchool and some don't. So, all right. Thanks, Nikki. That was a good question. And maybe if you want to show, sorry, right, as you unshared, what Nikki was discussing, where you can go into inactive students. So if you do that, it'll look like a search interface, and you can find data about those students. I think that was inactive users, Anne. And you're on mute if you might be talking.
Well, I was just commenting on my brilliance of going to the wrong place. So I don't think anyone wants to hear that. So I could choose my school and then hit view inactive students.
Yeah. And in the training set, you won't get much, but it's
Yeah.
also worth showing, Anne, if you can go back to that menu, searching by exit reason or searching by date can be helpful too. So if you drop down the exit reason drop down, Anne, near the bottom, this will be any reason we might receive from PowerSchool. So you can sort by reason or you can sort by date. Thanks for pointing that out, Nikki.
All right, and so then the next item on the agenda is grade levels. And this is just a reminder to correct grade levels in PowerSchool when they're coming up with that XGAE. And I think we're going to show them like examples of what that looks like. But for reporting purposes, you're going to want to have those grade levels corrected. I don't know, Nick, do you have
So-
anything to add on that? Or Ann?
Nick, do you have anything to add on that?
I think where you can see it, Anne, is if you go to student search, if you still have the sharing ability. And then if you go to advanced search, or yeah, that works too. Two ways to view the same thing. Then if you scroll down to where all grade levels are accessible, there's a large number of grade levels, and what these represent are anything we might get from a student in the file. So if we're receiving a student in this grade level, it's because they're tagged that way in PowerSchool. And I think Lindy, seeing your reference to Z1 and Z3, I believe that relates to the first year after 12th grade and then the third year after 12th grade. If you could let me know in the chat if I'm on base there with the student examples you're thinking of. But we know some of these are not federally compliant grade level grade level examples, and we're working through this with the data team. So Carolyn highlighted for me that some folks might be having a P3 grade level translate incorrectly from pre-K 3. That's also on the team's radar. So if you're having any grade level questions, please submit them through Zendesk. That'll be the best way we can gather them, and we can help to resolve this because it's connected to what comes out of the data warehouse. Katie, anything to add there? And Lindy, thank you for indicating on the Z1 and Z3.
No, I think, yeah, we had talked about Z3 earlier today, and we are meeting again, PCG and SCDE, like, IT Power School people, again, Monday to kind of sort through some of that part. So the next piece, Nick and Ann, is, reevaluation loop. And so, we have some users that are getting into a reevaluation loop, I guess we're calling it, when they've already completed it, don't realize it, and they start it again. So we just wanted to walk through that because we've been receiving quite a few tickets on this issue.
Okay, so I have tried to get through most of the evaluation, reevaluation process here. And so what's happening is you've entered and you've created your final reevaluation planning with all of your information in. And then when you get to eligibility determination and you create the final, it will create a final. Right now it's giving me this evaluation summary results is missing, but it will create the final, but it won't pull the final up for you to see it. So you don't think it's created. So you go to create another final and it will give you that message that it's pulling up right now for me. So you think you have to go back and fix something in the evaluation summary results page. And then you end up going back into the consent to eval page. And then you end up back at reeval planning. And it just kind of loops you through and you're trying to finalize documents. But if you go here to the documents page, you'll see that the document's finalized in here. That everything is finalized. And it's when you went to refinalize this eligibility determination, that's what's causing you to go through a loop because it's seeing you as trying to determine eligibility again. So it already has that first time that you determined eligibility. So it's sending you back through because it thinks you're doing it a new time. And so you end up getting caught in this never-ending cycle of trying to get that to work. If you get here and it's looping you around, telling you when you create final that you don't have that information in, like I think it's the eval completion date, go to your documents and see if that eligibility determination is here finalized. And then you can just stop. You don't have to keep going because you have everything already. And we're working on making it very clear. I think this in one of the updates to have that document pop up. So you see that, yes, the document was created and it doesn't make you think that you have to do it again. But if you, long story short is, when you create this final eligibility determination, don't create a new one if you press final until you check your documents to see if a final eligibility determination was created. And if it was, you're finished, you're done. You completed everything. Does that make sense? Did I explain that correctly, Katie?
Yep. It's
Yeah.
just that endless loop. Like I said, we've been
Yeah.
getting a lot of tickets, and so a lot of it is a training piece
Mhm.
because that tile really doesn't just stays gray, and so it, yeah. So I
and the
think it
tile
just,
doesn't change, and you think that it didn't finalize, and then you try to do it again, and it tells you that you're missing a eval completion date, and then you can't add the new eval completion date, so then you end up going back to the beginning, and you just feel like you're creating these documents over and over.
over and over again. Yep. Okay, so the next piece is looking at transfers. So, we have a demonstration of transfer process for duplicate students.
For duplicate students?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, yes.
Okay.
Sorry, it took me a second to,
I know there's a lot of items on this agenda today. So
that's, so the transfer process. Let me pull up another site because I have this student is ready to transfer. So let me get the demo site. Right here, the demo site is going to ask for this student that I'm in right here, this and add event test. So I'm going to go to admin actions, student transfer, and I'm going to request this transfer. Going to choose my school, training site, enter my student's information, date of birth, ID number. Okay, so now I've added my student's information that I'm going to ask to get transferred. Then I'm going to request that student transfer. So now it gives me my request details. And then it says right here, a new student will be created. You do not want to create a new student. You want to select an existing destination student. And all that information pulls in. I'm going to view that student. And this is the student that I want to transfer. Everything matches. Everything comes in. The student's going to be reactivated and the transfer request is going to go through. And then you're going to indicate, and this is a different thing with the transfer of information. The main point of the not duplicating students here was do not create a new student. If you know that student, you're asking for the transfer from another county, you want to pull existing student information. If you say create a new student, that will create a whole new student in the system. So the information that transfers over won't be attached to that new student. It will be attached to that UID of the existing student. So always choose an existing student for your transfer. And then
Jump in here, Anne. Sorry. Can I jump in really quick and add one
yes,
point?
please.
And this has happened, I think we've probably worked with some folks on this call on Zendesk tickets. If the incorrect student is accidentally created rather than trying to merge them with the correct ID, we can handle that with a student merge. If you submit a Zendesk ticket, we can take the incorrectly created student and merge them with the correctly created student from the PowerSchool feed. But I think the main signal to avoid is if you or any of your staff members find themselves typing in a PowerSchool ID or a shorter ID in EdPlan, that's not the right step. And that means at some point we will have to do a merge. So the easiest way to understand what not to do, I think, is you should never be typing in an ID that is not the student son's ID.
Should I go back to that screen to show it again, or?
I think we might be all
And-
right. I
okay.
don't know, Katie. Yeah.
yeah, the other piece of this, and it took me a second, is the EdPlan Connect parent portal status. That transfers over with the student. And so that's what we wanted to make sure too, that we were telling them. So if your student is coming from Richland 2 and they use the portal and that is checked, and you're in a different district and you're not using the portal, that check mark will be checked when they come over. And so you'll want to make sure that's unchecked if you're not wanting finalized documents to be going through the portal.
And especially with student transfers, it might just be the best idea to not pull the parents over, because that comes in from your PowerSchool. often kids might be moving because they have a change in custody. And you don't want to get involved with having old parents pulling in or old guardians pulling in to the system that can just muddy those waters. So just deselect parents and then schedule your student transfer.
All right. Any question? And Dan, I know you're still on. There's a question in the chat if you wanna answer that to Wendy directly, or if you have an answer to that.
Yeah, let's see. Oh, yep. So oral administration is not readily accessible for grade 3 due to Read to Achieve testing. So it's not an accommodation that we would want to provide, given there is not a limitation that does not allow the student to access the test at all, i.e. visual impairment or hearing impairment that may impact their ability to access the test at all. That would really be the exception there for grade 3. So that's why that's excluded there is Read to Achieve.
Okay. So looking at our next piece is the dashboard feature of posting an announcement. And so we got some feedback that a lot of people weren't sure like who they were supposed to go to for help if they have a problem with EdPlan, or there's been some questions of like I'm not sure who my power user is. Maybe I don't know who to go to for help. And so we've been posting some information like using the announcements, but I don't think a lot of people are noticing those. And so we just want to remind everyone that you're able to post announcements, and you can post announcements like based on user types as well. So you'll see user type, and then you can go. And so like if it was just a certain user type that you wanted, to get the information, you could do that. But you're able to post announcements here, and it might be good just to take advantage or to put something up on there. We've been adding more announcements. We added the end user announcements, like the end user webinar announcements. We're using the announcements for SSO. So we're trying to make sure that we're using that announcement dashboard a little bit more to hit all end users, to take some of that off of the power users to disseminate all that information. The next one is transportation. And so we had some questions about overall about using the form, running the reports, and then the purpose of request type. So I think the first one is the form, and you do not have to use this transportation form that's in the system. I've had a couple districts reach out and they said, we want to use our own, and that's fine. You could always upload it if you wanted. The system doesn't make you complete that transportation request form. The goal is to have the form like full of all the information that all the districts want. So I know we've made a lot of changes to it. I just received another district request form with some more things that people wanted added. So we're trying to make it robust, but not with a lot of rules of completion, so that it is something that all the districts want to use, so that you're not having to use something that's separate from the system. Then the next question is about the report. And I think, and if you could go to the a student where it's special considerations. And then
What are we going to be looking for?
in transportation, we're going to say yes.
This one has that as yes, yes.
Okay.
So IP process, special considerations, transportation, yes.
And then when we scroll down from here, let's see. It asks the question, will the student access transportation? And someone said, we already addressed it. Are they talking about like do they need transportation from the parent? So this is tied to reporting. So Nick, correct me if I'm wrong here. This is pulling. This is where we're pulling like whether the student has transportation or not.
Yeah, that's right. It's like the affirmative flag that they do access it.
Right. So it was kind of like asked, can this be removed because it's kind of redundant. We've already said, yes, they need transportation. So this isn't transportation like that they need transportation to and from school, like, and mom's doing it. This is like, is the district providing transportation? So this is where it's pulling when reporting is ran. And so that is why that is there. So you do need to address that question. And then the purpose of request type. So Anne, if you could take us to the complete transportation request to the form. And so this is kind of a little bit of a discussion too, and I'm open to any feedback on what this says. But when you click on request type, there's a list there. And we've gotten some questions about, well, what should I select if it's an amendment, or what should I select if it's this? This is a quickly configurable list. So if there's other options that we need to add in, that we need to consider, what I would really do is look at with your transportation department is look at the list, and then you all determine like, this is what this means for us. Because I think annual IEP was brought up that one time, you know, it's annual, but shouldn't it just be at the start of the school year? You know, and so there was some back and forth about the wording that is in the request type. So basically, like, you know, address change, I would go with anytime the child's address was changed. Annual IEP is when I've done a new IEP. Yes, why are they needing transportation for that? And then new request. So that was like the confusing part, because they were like, well, does this mean that it's a new request because the child's never had transportation? Because anything could be a new request because you're making a new request. It's a different request than what was already requested. And so to me, new request is like the first time that the student is receiving transportation. And so then new school year, and then if it's going to be, you know, next school year, removing is going to be, we're getting rid of transportation and they're no longer receiving that. But maybe your transportation department, it's not a form, it's something else that you send. And then school change. So any feedback that you have on what's in there now, if there's something you're like, no, I really needed to have this as an option, we can look at that. So that's what those pieces are. All right, so looking at goal, the next piece here, sorry, is next school. So Nick and Ann.
Yeah, I think, Anne, if you're narrating your scrolls, you are on mute. I think you're making the right scrolls, but
Okay, I went to student information and then personal info. And that screen gives me the option when I'm scrolling down that I can edit next school year. Is that where I need to be at, Nick?
yeah, I think we're just talking about this field in the system. This next school field exists, and it kind of enables two main purposes. On the training site, it's going to look unusual because you're going to have 3 schools for every district, but in your district, it would just be your district school list. And what you can do here is associate an additional school with the student. So as we're coming to the spring, if you want to give records access to folks in a middle school, and they have students in 5th grade at an elementary. So you could assign the middle school like Anne's doing as their next school. And this will do 2 core things in the system once it's set. One is folks will be able to see the student in search results associated with the middle school using the exact same permissions. So that does not mean that general ed educators at the middle school will get access to the student. It just means that people who have all schools access would be able to see that student and review the records. Additionally, it will use the length of school week for the next school in the placement calculator on the student's placement page in the IEP process. So if there's a difference in minutes between the student at the elementary school and at the middle, or between the middle and the high school, and the next school is set, the placement calculator will pick up the next week length for that student. Anything to add there, Katie or Anne?
Not for me.
Yeah, and go ahead, Katie.
Nope, I was gonna say, no, that was it. So I think we can move on to our next item.
see
'Cause
it.
I've not seen, oh, wait,
Lori,
will
with
there
you.
ever be a way for this to update automatically from Power School? Oh. You wanna talk about that, Nick?
Yeah, I can.
Okay.
This is something we're looking at doing right now from the statewide perspective. We have to make sure that the fields is coming over correctly from Power School to your EdFi data warehouse, and then from your EdFi data warehouse into EdPlan. But it is a need we've heard loud and clear. So we are looking into this as a team to understand if we can do this automatically. Updates to come on that, but it's in the works.
Yep. So it's being tested. We've heard that. Lori, you always have such great feedback and comments. I appreciate those. Great suggestions. And so with that, we are testing it. But we did find from what we were hearing is some districts really don't use that. So for some districts, it would be super beneficial, and others it would not be unless they were, they started using that next school piece. So we are looking into that though. So great suggestion. All right. Share my screen. Our next item is the dashboard widgets. And so I just took the screen share from somebody that I probably shouldn't have. We're going to look at the dashboard widgets and an update that we're going to be making to the school administrator dashboard based on some feedback and some conversation that we've had.
So for the widgets, what's going to happen, Katie? I wasn't able to hear you there.
Oh, sorry.
I don't know if something's happening or not.
Oh, sorry. No, is that your screen, Ann? It is,
Yes.
isn't it? Okay. So on the dashboard widget, we're going to be making an update to the school administrator dashboard. So they'll be able to see students by status, students by disability, and then students by percentage of time in special ed. So that'll be a change for them. I don't really think it'll impact a lot of, our power users, but that will be a change to their dashboard widget.
So these widgets will show information for the entire school, not just people that administrator is on the team for.
Yep. So that was just some feedback we had gotten. And then next up for our agenda items is the initial evaluation, and then it says evaluation dates in our notes.
All right, so are we talking about the evaluation planning date here? Which dates are we referring to?
Yep,
The referral dates?
So I think they were asking, I think the ask was where those dates were pulling from.
Okay. So here on this first evaluation planning document, we have a referral date right here and the evaluation planning date here. If you go into are those the dates that they were looking for, or are they looking for other dates as well?
No, I think it was those two specific dates.
Yeah, right here. Where they pull from.
Okay. All right. So then any questions about the referral dates and where they're pulling from. And you can change those dates, I believe, though, too. They can be edited. I think they'll populate, but then you can't edit them. Then the next thing we have is the goal, begin, and end date ROC, and I think Nick's covering that.
Yeah, definitely. So we're aware of a few cases right now where IEPs are being finalized where the begin date of a goal is prior to the begin date of the IEP, or the end date of a goal is after the end date of an IEP. It seems that some ROCs in certain places aren't properly catching that mistake. This is something that's being fixed right now and will be updated within the next week. But if you're experiencing a lack of an ROC on a goal where you'd expect it to stop you and give you an error, please submit that in Zendesk and we can help support it there. We've had a few instances of this reported. And Anne, can you show the review all goals table from the PLP goals page? This would probably be the fastest way to view it for all goals for a student. So yeah, if you might have to use yeah. If you scroll down to the very bottom of the PLP goals page and click on the review all goals button, this will give the fastest look at the goal begin and end dates for a student. All right, that's all I have on that one.
Okay, we're gonna move into data storage solutions real quick. All that was is that for data storage solutions, I had asked on the LEA call, we had several districts have reached out to me about how are districts, storing their data. And so if you have anything that wasn't shared, like if you weren't on the LEA call and didn't already share, if you have anything that you'd like to send me, or you could drop it in the chat, what company are you using? What company are you using? What did you do to get your data out of Enrich so that you have this for, those historical retention purposes? The next piece is just procedural safeguards that was on the agenda. And same ask as when I was on the LEA call. What I'm looking to do is, I know that the state, so we have already translated Spanish and simplified Chinese. And so we have those two. What I'm wanting to do is take those templates and then have a tab in EdPlan where those templates are there for you. So if you need procedural safeguards in a different language, that there's like this repository of them, so that you're not having to pay for something that maybe that has already been done. My overall goal is to at least have the languages that we have in EdPlan, so like the Portuguese, the Vietnamese, Arabic, Russian, have those procedural safeguards there for districts to use in looking at, ways to make that, so not so burdensome. I've been looking around like what other states are doing, and how they're handling that. And so just looking at doing a repository. So if there's something that you've already had translated and you are willing to share, if you're will share that with me. If you have any feedback of like, yeah, I needed this and it was really hard to find, or I don't want to say stories of it being expensive, or any feedback that would help me justify us doing this, that could be useful as well. So that's for procedural safeguards. And then I have two more little things before we move on to single sign-on. Future office hours. So our last office hour that we have scheduled for 2025 is June. And so I would love feedback on, do we need one in July? Are we taking a break in July and then starting back in August? Do we still want to have, do you still need or want monthly office hours? Do you want them at 90 minutes? Do you want them at an hour? So I just need that feedback as I'm planning for next school year already. I know some of us are just trying to get through this school year, so we're not thinking about next year. But for finance purposes, I need to look at what you think we need. I think my thought right now is that we won't have an office hours in July. We'll start back up with one probably like early mid-August. and then run through them for the remainder of the school year, and do them at the 90 minutes. But I would like that feedback from you all that are on the call. And then looking at the eligibility worksheets. So I mentioned this on the LEA call, and I just wanted to share it with the power users as well in case you didn't hear this. And those eligibility worksheets that are, share my screen really quick, are in they're in Ed Plan already under special ed forms. I'm in the training site, so they are in the production site, but the one that I am talking about is not yet in the production site. They will be. I only had the first one done, but I am going through, and for all of the forms, all of these eligibility criteria worksheets, I am adding headers and updating them so that they're fillable forms. And so those are, like I said, I only have DD done, but I'm working on the rest of them. And I am also working on updating under system transition materials, updating those new forms. So like making sure that they have like the header changed in a lot of the forms. It doesn't say the date is like birth date now, instead of date created. So looking at that, and then the big overhaul will be the IEPs with the changes that have done. I won't send out a survey. If you just want to tell me your input, that would be great. You could just email me in what you're thinking. And then those are those two things that I had. So the eligibility worksheets, I'm working on getting those there. Office hours, and then I mean we're still having averaging about 100 people on office hours, so I think they're still beneficial as we continue to have changes and work through things. I think they can be it's a great way for us to share our information. And then the last item agenda that we have is SSO. And so SSO, so we have districts that are currently selecting their what we're calling the go live date for SSO, meaning that they are, they've tested their link, it works, they're currently using ClassLink already, and so we're moving them forward. And so we have different dates in April for that, for those districts that have tested. And so then we're looking at some districts that maybe haven't responded about, yes, we want to roll into SSO, we want to start using it. You know, we're currently using ClassLink. And I shared this out at the LEA call also. And then we have a group of districts that they're not using ClassLink, but will be going to ClassLink. So the state adopted or paid for ClassLink, and that contract will start in July. And so with that, districts can move into using SSO to get into Ed Plan instead of the MFA in July. So we've kind of got those two phases of districts that are currently using ClassLink, and then those that will be using ClassLink later this summer. So where we're at right now is if you've received emails from me and Nick and your IT people, you kind of know what I'm talking about. If you're not on using ClassLink right now, we're going to hold off until summer. You'll get more information about that process. Nick, do you have anything to add about that?
No, I'm sorry if you tried to talk to me in the last like 5 minutes. I dropped off.
No, you're good.
I'm back. No, I agree. I think we're just trying to make sure there's coordination between IT departments who are saying we're ready for ClassLink to go live and power users who have the closest pulse on their staff and if they're ready for it to go live. So I think the best decision in when to move forward with SSO is when you and your IT department both feel settled on moving forward. You might have already said that, Katie. I apologize if I missed the start, but
No,
I think that's really what we're aiming for. Yeah.
Yeah.
Joan, I did take a mini nap there for 5 minutes sitting here. No,
yes,
I'm trying
Nick's
to catch up on the chat too. So if you have a question in the chat, I'm coming back to it. So
Nick's
thanks,
very
everybody.
busy. He takes a little power nap. You need a little power nap. It's been a busy day rolling out SSO. Busy last couple of days. And so if you have other questions, you can drop those in the chat. I did see the question about, will the state consider keeping Enrich? We have Ed Plan. We've moved on to Ed Plan. If your district is looking at using a different system, you need to contact Peter and I, and we can discuss that. But this is the state adopted program that we are using. We have put forth a lot of great effort and energy using feedback, using funding to make changes based on that feedback. You know, the same things I'm hearing now, you know, that I heard 10 years ago when I rolled out Enrich. It's a change. And so if you need extra support, I'm here. You need to email me and say, hey, can you come and help me do some training? Can you come and sit with me? I've gone to many districts. Sherry has been very helpful with helping me go to districts to sit with people, to show them how to do things. Whether it's end user training I've helped with, we put out those webinars. So if there's something else that you need to help with adoption at your district, let me know, because if I don't know, I can't help. I've said this from the start. I said this a year ago, don't suffer in silence. So if you're still having problems, let me know what I can do to support and work through it. And so if there's any other additional questions about Ed Plan and the processes, and I know a lot of districts are excited about SSO and the MFA. I will say if you still have teachers that are only have one way to get in, which is their email, they're probably really going to want to make sure that, especially like as we get into this heavy IEP season and summer, that they update that SSO is single sign-on. And so it's through ClassLink where you can just like sign in one time and you have all of your things, like all of your apps at your district that your district has. We actually got to see Oconee, they shared with us like how that looks, and it was amazing to see like all these apps in one spot and how they have it very organized. And so again, Oconee's been our test district for this, super helpful with making sure that, you know, because we're using a lot of Katie's using a lot of like technical terms that's not Katie's area. And so they've been super helpful with helping us roll out that single sign-on. So I know SSO, like I was like, I don't know if I knew what SSO was before last year, but that is the single sign-on, and it's so that you like ClassLink, Clever, so you can just access all of your apps in one, and you're not like having to find your phone for the text message or an email with the code. So, all right. Well, that is everything that we have for today. I don't think Nick or Ann, Sherry, did I miss any other questions? Let's see. Any updates to Part C to B becoming a document? So that is that, I think you're referring to the BabyNet form that's like currently under the student profile page. We are still looking at that, making that into a form. Yes.
Nick, was there anything else that you needed to add to some of the LRE questions, or did you get all those covered?
Yeah, I'm seeing, Emily, you're describing the same thing that I responded to Tania as being isolated, and you're saying you're seeing the same thing. So I'm going to follow up with SEDE. We'll take a look at what you're describing, Emily and Tania, and see if we can come up with guidance to avoid the situation. And my apologies if I misdiagnosed it as isolated, Tania.
And then there was a question. Oh, go ahead.
Thomas, the questions you're asking on next school, those are great questions. I don't have the answer in the moment. I want to make sure we connect with the SCDE data team. So the answer I give you is the answer that's true across all teams. That's the question about what will happen to students next school. That's set right now, but if we come back in the fall, how is that handled? I want to check with the SCDE data team, and we'll get a response back out after we meet next week. Right, back to you, Katie.
So he also had, Thomas also had the request about the due dates. So it can just show like their actual caseload and not where their team members. So we can look at that. And then there was a question, I just lost it. Oh, there it is. I don't think we hit this. Will Indicator 7 data in Enrich be imported to Ed Plan? Is there a projected date for the issues with Indicator 7 to be resolved?
Yeah, I can speak to this one. And if you have questions on this, I know we've communicated with, I think, at least 30 different districts in Zendesk about Indicator 7. So if you have specific questions, please reach out. I'll be on the other end of those questions. It was imported from Enrich. So if you have a student and you're wondering, is there COAST data inside of EdPlan? You'll see it in the student history page. The issue we're experiencing right now is with the report pulling information from EdPlan and the imported data from Enrich at the same time. So if you're looking at your report and not seeing students you'd expect, that is something that's under resolution, and we expect it being released a week from today. So the night of April the 3rd, meaning we'd start running the reports on the morning of April 4th and seeing all the data. If you're concerned that student data didn't transfer, I would first go check the profile for the student you're concerned about. There's a very good chance it's in the student history. But as we experienced in August, when we were first launching the system, for some reason or another, some student data didn't transfer. And if you are experiencing that, please reach out to us in Zendesk. We can trace back to the data that transferred from Enrich. But broadly, the data did transfer. Check the student profile if you're wondering about a specific student. The report will be updated by next week, Thursday, Friday morning, to pull all the data at once. Sherry, Katie, anything I missed from our discussions, and then anything in the chat I'm not seeing?
No, I think that's all I'm seeing. So, I did see somebody drop the top 10 languages. Yep, we have those. I know we took the top 6, from that list, I believe. Because that was done before I was here, but, let's see. No, I think I'm not seeing any other questions. So with that, we will say good afternoon. Have a good night. And if you need anything, you know where we are. Thank you, everyone.